Hey, I'm Dr. Wilson. I'm a PhD molecular biologist, and welcome to another COVID debunking video. So, a few weeks ago, a meta-analysis was published in the journal Pharmaceuticals about the treatment of COVID using vitamin D. This is not a good meta-analysis by any measure, and yet certain people, including a nurse with a PhD in education, has popularized this study as proof that vitamin D treats COVID. It does not. So in this video, I'm going to go over what a meta-analysis is, what this one says, and what the literature around vitamin D for treating COVID actually says. So let's get started. A meta-analysis is a paper where a group of researchers essentially take the work of other groups, put them all together, and analyze the strength of their conclusions all in one paper. In this case, the researchers are taking 5 other papers that looked at how well vitamin D can treat COVID, and they're assessing the strength of those studies and whether or not they can make any conclusions from the studies as a whole. However, one big issue that you always have to look out for in meta-analyses or reviews like this of any kind is this concept of garbage in, garbage out. If you're not including good studies in the first place, then you're not going to have a good conclusion at the end of your analysis. So let's look at the 5 studies that were included in this meta-analysis on treating COVID with vitamin D. The first 3 apparently show a benefit. These were randomized controlled trials. However, they each included fewer than 100 patients, which is not great, but it is something, right? It's a study, they found a result, and that result becomes part of the body of scientific literature surrounding this question. The next one is another randomized controlled trial, which included about 240 patients, and they found no benefit for vitamin D in treating COVID. Okay, so we have 3 randomized controlled trials that together equal just under 300 patients showing a benefit, and we have 1 clinical trial, including 240 patients, that shows no benefit. Okay, so what's their 5th study say? Well, the authors say that this 5th study shows a benefit. However, this 5th study, it's not a randomized controlled trial. It's an observational study, which involves no randomization and no placebo. So why the authors included it in a study where they said they were only looking at randomized controlled trials? I don't know. That's a big mistake by the authors, and it actually really hurts their analysis. If you remove that paper from their analysis, then the protective benefit they claim to have found doesn't look so protective. And yet a certain nurse with a PhD in education didn't point this out to his audience, even though he just reads papers and totally delivers good information. Yeah, not really. And so that's the list of studies that were used in this meta-analysis, and I just can't help but wonder why only these 5 studies, one of which, again, isn't even a randomized controlled trial. There are plenty of other randomized controlled trials that they could have included that are much more well-powered. For example, they could have included this one, which pretty convincingly shows no benefit of vitamin D for any stage of COVID. It did not improve patient outcomes, it did not prevent infection, it just didn't work. Why they excluded it? I don't know. Did they not know about it? Did they purposely exclude it? I don't know. But what we do know is that the scientific literature as a whole generally supports the notion that vitamin D is not going to treat COVID. I often see COVID conspiracy theorists claiming that medical officials always downplayed the importance of vitamin D and healthy lifestyles and all that stuff, and that if only we had a national vitamin D campaign where everybody checked their levels and everybody got their levels up to the optimal levels, then we wouldn't have had a pandemic. And that's just silly. It's a really silly approach to an imminent pandemic that is threatening the nation right now. Not only have scientific and medical professionals always advocated for people to eat a healthy diet that would support a optimal level of vitamins and nutrients in your body, get enough sleep, get exercise, all of that, but none of these things are actually solutions to an imminent pandemic. Even if your body is healthy and has optimal levels of these things, it doesn't mean that it's totally immune to COVID and other infectious diseases. Will it help to not be nutrient deficient? Absolutely, but only to a certain extent. It's not going to eliminate the threat entirely. Furthermore, the idea that vitamin D is something that was suppressed by the pharmaceutical company because it doesn't make money is just bonkers. Vitamins are a multi-billion dollar business just in America. If there was a national vitamin D campaign where everybody was going out buying vitamin D supplements all at the same time, then they would have made a ton of money. But that didn't happen because the science just didn't really support it. Most of the actions that COVID minimizers said would have prevented the pandemic really come down to lifestyle changes. And these kinds of lifestyle changes, again, are things that medical professionals have always advocated for. But it doesn't work to just advocate for a healthy lifestyle. Not everyone's going to follow it. And I'm pretty sure that these same people who did not like government mandates during the pandemic also would not appreciate the government mandating sleep and how much you exercise and what you eat, right? So recommending these long-term lifestyle changes that could correct things like vitamin deficiencies was not going to be the solution to the pandemic. We needed more action that would have effects sooner. We needed action to slow the spread of the infectious disease. We needed antivirals to treat the actual illness. And we needed tools to induce immunity so that we could be protected before we actually encounter the virus. All of those things is what happened. But for some reason, a lot of people still like to believe that there's a easy and natural quick fix to a problem that is as complicated as a pandemic. And a certain nurse with a PhD in education is not helping to correct that. Well, that's all I wanted to say this week. So if you want to learn more about all this stuff or check my sources on all the science that I talked about in this video, it's all going to be linked in the description below so that you can read it for yourself. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe so that you can catch me next week where I'll be debunking some more funky stuff. See you then.